All right, welcome to episode 416 of the Artcasters. Let's kick it off.
This one goes out to the Artcasters. Ooh, Artcasters! I say you're guessing your spell, Artcasters. Guessing your spell. Ooh, you're gonna guess that spell. Strike a hell. Whoa! Ooh, hi, 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 hi. Hi, hi.
That is correct. We are
Somehow I
the
never noticed it's captioned. I was so mesmerized by his bike shorts the whole time. I never noticed that it's actually being spelled out like the lyrics.
It makes it funnier. You know?
It's just in case, the lyrics are too complicated to understand.
If you want to write them down in your
Like,
track-
it's a nuanced. It's kind of a nuanced thing, so you don't get a lot of the the lyrical plays on words if you can't read it.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want people to think it's aw when it's really ooh. Sorry, go ahead, Scott.
I think I misspelled I. I put letter I, but maybe it's I like a pirate, or maybe it's I like eyes that you look with. I don't know.
Yeah.
See with. I don't know.
You really have to check like Lyrical Genius to like really figure it out, guys. These are deep lyrics, okay? Has Gary got short hair? Asks Christopher Runciman.
All his hair is there. It's just not on his head.
Yeah, all my hair is all present. So I don't know what to tell you.
I'm not sure why it is so disturbing that you just have it in like a normal Ziploc bag.
Look, what else am I gonna make a voodoo doll out of? I mean, I don't know why it's weird. I don't know, it's strange.
Can I ask? Is that like a?
He pulled it out of a file cabinet full of a bunch of bags of.
Let me find here.
Hold on, I've got to move my jars of toenails that I've been saving.
Right. Yeah, all my baby teeth.
The question is it like the freezer burn safe, like high quality bag, or is it just one of the cheapo bags that's going to rip open at any moment?
This is only, this isn't your, Kirkland brand bullshit here. This is Ziploc. We're going all the way with the finest Ziploc available to send my ponytail to a lucky fan.
I love it.
A
lucky fan.
We won't.
Here's how to absolutely.
Guys, whoever buys the next free pack of DVSM comics gets an authentic Gary Hodges ponytail, just like that.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is how to absolutely kill your sales on your comic, or it's how to get a brand new audience that you never wanted.
That's right.
Yeah. That's a good point.
That's yeah. No, just for the record, you're not going to get a ponytail if you buy some comics tonight. I don't know who's watching. I don't know who might think that's a thing.
That's a fair point. You never know. We have a very diverse audience. You never know.
I already brought this up on the screen, but it deserves to be read. I was worried he didn't have it in a bag.
This is so good.
Safety first. Safety first.
Yeah. I love it. So we have a really good topic tonight. I'm really excited to get into it. Obviously, some people in the chats already know who our special guest is. Some people who know how to read might have noticed that, like, there's a name under our guest. But for those of you who didn't notice any of those things, let's make the rounds and let them know where to find us. Traditionally, the host of it will go first on Artcasters, but in this case, I'm going to actually let Jim Lujan speak for me in a debut video. So those of you who have watched my live streams and Artcasters I've premiered a couple of these on, Jim Lujan has made videos, 2 videos so far, that are commercials for my 2 books, Jacob's Apartment and 2 Stories. And lo and behold, the other day, I get home from a hard, harrowing night working really long hours, feeling exhausted and underappreciated by the public, like the unappreciated independent artist that I am. And I get home and I log into my email, and what do I get but what I'm about to debut for you guys? And here it is. Home Shopping Crumble.
Well, thank you, Colleen. I hope your daughter Kelly does well at North Carolina State this year. Well, we got another caller on the line. Elizabeth from Phoenix, Arizona. Elizabeth, what can we do for you? Are you ready to do some shopping, girl?
Oh, yes, Terry. I am ready to do some shopping today. I'm interested in that 2-book set you have. 2 Stories and Jacob's Apartment.
Oh, well, that's a great choice.
In fact, I bought these books before. I gave a set to my grandson, Hunter. These books are amazing.
Well, they sure are, and if you buy both of them, you really get the whole feel of the whole Joshua Campbell universe. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do, Terry. These books are remarkable because, for one, you can take them anywhere. You could put them in your car, and you can go to the park or the river. We've gone to the river. My husband Taylor and I, we just love it. And I murdered my husband at the river. Yeah, I did. But these still are amazing books.
The husband line. That just killed me. I was like, okay.
Oh, man. It's funny because it's funny just on its own without any, like, just the fact of the situation. But then there's always that thing that's... Oh, man. I love it.
Nicely done. Nicely
yeah.
done.
Seriously, that did make my night. So thank you very much to Jim Lujan for doing that.
Very good.
Scott, where can everybody find your work?
You can find my work at my website, circworks.com, where I have my comic books, like my comic Young and the Dead. It's a kids versus zombie adventure story. Just think Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead. I also have digital products up there if you're a comic creator. They'll help you create comics better, faster, and all that. I've got my wax packs on there that I'm doing. Custom wax packs for movies that never actually had wax packs, so you can check those out. And then I've got a YouTube channel. Just search Circworks Art Labs on YouTube. And I am taking old ephemera from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, like things you would order from the back of comic books. And I kind of put a twist on it and kind of recreate it, but in a little different way. If you're not familiar with that stuff, go check it out on my YouTube channel, Circworks Art Labs on YouTube.
Awesome. And then Corey, you just dropped a audio chapter.
I did.
For your book. Where can people check that out? And also, if they want to avoid the algorithm and the creepiness of social media, how can they follow you?
Well, I too would like to play a cartoon that Jim has made for me to promote my work, but I can't because he never has. So you can go to coreycure.com /email, and that'll take you right there to my Substack. You can jump on the Substack or just read in there. I also have a playlist. I guess if you go to my YouTube channel and click on the podcast tab, they're all being collected there. So you can check those out. Yeah.
Corey, I think
another.
Oh, I was going to say, I think the key is that you just have to do some 3-hour live streams, and then maybe he'll make one for you.
Yeah.
That's true. You need live streams that are so long that you need potty breaks.
I was actually considering live streaming this, just because I think it would be hilarious. I want to see how long it would take for everyone to leave when they realize I'm just writing, like on a live stream. I just think that you don't get to watch. Yeah, like maybe I'll pull like a Kremble and do a close up of my hands on the keyboard typing, or whatever. But yeah. Anyway, the audiobooks that I'm reading are much more entertaining than any live stream of me creating the audiobooks would be. But yeah,
that reminds me of that Monty Python bit. If you haven't seen it, it's like the Writers Olympics, and it's like a stadium full of an audience, like enwrapped, and it's like, and I think I believe the authors are competing to write the greatest novel in the world, and author one had written it. They wrote it and they're going into the superlative, and like they start getting into like all the grammar of it. It's the funniest thing ever. You hear the audience just like roaring. Anyhow, that is honestly what it's like to watch Corey's stuff. It's like watching the audience roaring. These are really great.
Which is why I don't live stream it, because it's hard to focus with all the screaming, adoring fans. Yeah.
And I have the last chapter horrified me. Like in a good way. Like it was really terrifying. Like, yeah.
Yeah. This one should be a bit of a palate cleanser. It's about a guy who was shot with a BB gun when he was 10. And because of that, when everybody starts slipping in time, he actually gains the ability to control slipping. And so he can control slipping forward. And so he could solve literally all of the world's problems, and chooses to go to a bar and try to pick up chicks. So that's what that chapter is about. And you just get to like, try a line. And if that doesn't work, you just rewind and try it again, and see what works. So
YouTube hasn't notified me of that one yet, unfortunately.
That one won't drop yet. I just finished writing it. I've got to kind of edit it and record it. But
so we have some exclusives on this Artcaster. That's very.
Oh yeah, let me do this right. So if you sign up now, you will be the first to read the new chapter that I'll be dropping in the next 48 hours. How's that?
The story, new direction. You guys need to check it out. Gary is our guest. Gary Hodges, returning frequent guest. I think possibly our most viewed guest. It's hard. I'm sure it's a tight race between Luhan and Gary for the most frequent guest we've had on here.
Is that right?
Anyway, I would guess so. What do you think? Like, am I making that up? Oh, I don't know if Scott heard that. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
No, I think that sounds right. I think it's probably Gary.
Look at that. Look at that, Jim Luhan. How do you like them apples?
The gauntlet has been dropped. So
this is why I haven't gotten a video. This is why I haven't gotten a commercial, is because...
Got it. You guys are always at each other's throats.
Yes.
Neck and neck. Just always. So I love the idea of this topic, and I want us to get into it. But before we delve too deep, where can people pick up Dinosaurs versus Marsbots, also known as DVSM, if they're too lazy to click the link below that will take you to the Etsy store? And there are recently printed issues. Are they still there?
There are. There's a small resupply. I wanted to top off everything a little bit. So all 3 of the existing DVSM issues are available now. DVSM 1975, 1997, and the most recent 79. I'm currently hard at work on the 4th of the 6-issue series. It's eyewitness accounts from the front lines of a top secret, highly classified war involving aliens and men in black and scientists and soldiers, and yeah, there's dinosaurs in there too. So you can check it out. If you don't want to click, if for some reason that's too easy, you could laboriously type into a search engine Dinosaurs versus Marsbots Etsy, and that should take you to where you can buy the comics. But I would suggest just clicking on the link. That would probably be the better way. And then you could also, while you're at it, subscribe to my YouTube channel, where I'll be doing live streams talking about how it's going. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that tonight. So
nice. And that link's down there as well in the show notes. But yeah, I will tell you guys that, we always say this when we have Gary on. Sometimes people don't believe us, and then they see this happen. But it's like, there have been times where Dinosaurs versus Marsbots sells out on Etsy, and then it's not printed another 5 months.
Yes.
6 months.
Yes.
And I think the longest I've seen was like 6 months, where it was like,
oh, that's probably enough.
Yeah. But
because I still fund the printing, and it's not cheap to print books, especially the DVSM books are longer. They're thick. They're fat comics. So Yeah, sometimes I'll sell through and I'll drag my feet on ordering a new supply. So sometimes when they're sold out, it can be a few months before they'll be restocked.
Yeah. So act now while supplies last is my
There you
point. But so Gary, so the topic, do you want to kind of introduce what you had kind of brought up as something you wanted to discuss? Because I think it's a really fascinating issue, and I think we all probably have opinions on it, possibly really strong or growing opinions on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I'm streaming again. As I ramp up on working on the 4th issue of the 6-book series I'm doing, this will be DVSM 2001. Now that I'm kind of transitioning from writing to the more art type stuff, it's easier for me to bother myself with streaming. When I'm lost in writing, I usually don't want to stream. But 2 weeks ago, it was my first stream in a while, and I was just sort of reintroducing myself and saying I'm back and saying where I was at with the comic and what I intend to do going forward. And spontaneously, something came up that I thought would maybe be a good topic for us tonight. Now, trigger warning, I'm going to mention AI once or twice, but I do not intend this to be a whole AI conversation. It's just going to explain how I got to where I got. But in lieu of AI and the new landscape that it presents to all of us.
Did Corey just disappear at the mention of AI?
He just over it. Yeah, I understand. But anyway, in lieu of AI and this new landscape this new future we find ourselves in, we've all talked, I think on this channel and independently, about the importance of illustrating the difference between work done by a person and work done by a AI robot. And to me, the fundamental difference is process. If people have followed me for any length of time at all, I've banged on and on and on about this, that art isn't just a product, it's a process. It's everything that goes into it. And when I say process, I mean in a very big way. I mean like the how, the what, the why, the when, just everything that goes into it. Who you are, where you came from, what your tastes are, what your skill set is, the stuff, what you want to say, what you're trying to say, all the choices that go into your work, like all of that to me is process. Okay, it's this very, very broad category of the work that goes into your work. Okay, I think, and we've talked about this, I think we all believe it's important to start showing that more to the audience for them to develop an appreciation for it. And also to illustrate the difference between, like I said, what we do and what an AI algorithm does. What I wanted to talk about is all the different ways that we're approaching that, like how we want to show our process to people and what that looks like, what that means. So for example, like just talking about me, my streams are more vloggy. I was talking about this in my last stream. When it comes to like live drawing, I get uptight about that. Like I like watching other people do it. I don't like to do it. I don't like to work when I feel like I'm being watched. There are lots of things that I'm just not particularly interested in doing myself. I might be interested in consuming that sort of process video, but I don't want to do it myself. I tend to do more the nuts, the day in the life of an artist. I like to show people this is, for all, for good or bad, this is what a working artist looks like. And this is what a working artist who moonlights as an indie comic creator looks like. And these are the things I'm thinking about when I'm trying to be an artist. And these are my motivations. And this is my idea of what like good and bad inspiration is, and how I structure my day, and just, the kind of the nuts and bolts of it. We all, I think, do completely different things when it comes to sharing process. Josh, you do, I think, maybe more live drawing than any of us. Like I know, Corey, you do some, and Scott, you've probably done a little bit more, but I don't do any. Corey, I think, and I mean this, affectionately. Corey sometimes would like sermons about like, this is an idea that has me on fire right now, and he'll talk about it. And you can see how that idea is sort of the ember that's going to inform his work. So you're seeing that aspect of it. And Scott is doing a lot of like how to, like, these are the tools I use, and this is how I go about it. And, this is how, like he's showing you nuts and bolts. I'm doing, maybe I would like to think more of that kind of Pressfield or Rubin-esque kind of like, this is like what I think about. This is what's important to me when I'm designing a character. This is how I try to think about my work. This is how I relate to an audience. Like, it's a little more, I think, woo, or maybe, I don't know how other people would describe what I do. I guess the point is, and this is what I was hoping, like, maybe I would be interested in hearing what you guys thought about it. In lieu of the new AI world, and in lieu of our agreement that we need to start showing people process, we need to start showing people, behind the curtain, who we are and why we do what we do and what goes into it. What do you think is the most important thing to show? Like, what do you think people need to see? What do you think will build an appreciation for that? Do you think about it at all? Do you care about it? You just do what you do because you like doing it? Or has this new reality affected your thinking about what should I be putting out there in terms of process? And then I'm going to close with this. Here's just a little tiny example. I think the reason I do the more vloggy, like, this is what an artist looks like, this is my day-to-day kind of content, the reason I like it is because I think I really needed that when I was younger and getting started, and I didn't have it. Like, I think it would have been really helpful and useful to me, because I didn't have any it's that kind of like, you need to see it to be it kind of phenomenon. Like, I didn't have any examples of working artists. So the idea of being an artist it seemed very, not so much scary as abstract. And I didn't know what to do with that idea. And because I didn't have an example, when you would talk to normies, like non-creatives, about, well, I don't know, maybe I want to do art, you get normie feedback, which is, you might as well want to be an NBA player. Like, you might as well want to be in a rock band. Like, that's going to be really hard, and you're going to be broke, and it's going to be terrible. And why don't you just go be an accountant? Like, that's the sort of messaging, like, you get, and it takes a long time to overcome that from personal experience. I would have loved, I mean, this sounds vaguely navel-gazing or narcissistic, but I would have loved, when I was 15, to find my videos and see, like, oh, it looks sort of like that. And that's attainable. That seems realistic. Like, that's not way, out there. It's a very plausible, realistic life that, this is a guy who has made art the center of his life. And it seems very doable. And if he can do it, certainly I can. Like, that would have been, like, I think that's what I would most like to get out there in terms of process, quote unquote. Anyway, this was just my kind of, like, musing on it after it came up in my live stream. And I wanted, since we all have taken, like, way different approaches and we're touching different parts of the elephant, I was just curious how you all thought about it, react to that, and so on.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, I think I think really whatever you decide to do, it's a comfortability level or whatever. For instance, you said you don't like people watching you draw, or like looking over your shoulder. I totally get that. There are, and this is, you're probably not even interested in doing either, but I'm just throwing this out there as different ways people can do that. I mean, I'm even, the live thing, I'm not even 100% comfortable with doing that, even though, I just did Free Comic Book Day, and I actually had the people commissioning my work looking over my shoulder while I'm doing it and making suggestions. So it's not my favorite, but, depending on where you are. So, I mean, if you work on Procreate, it records everything. You're not even thinking about it, right. And then maybe you play back and you show that. If that's not, if even that's too much, then, then maybe there's maybe you just chronicle it with a photograph, and then you talk about it, kind of like what you do, Gary, where you talk about your process, and maybe every once in a while you'll show some work in progress that way. So there's different levels. It doesn't have to be people watching you as you do it live. It could be, you could be recording. You could just be taking snapshots. You can you can go back and talk about it after the fact. So, but whatever the case is, I still think it's pretty in most cases. And there's I'm sure there's some areas where maybe it's not as crucial, but I think it's more important, especially I guess like if you're somebody like, and this can all change as AI evolves and stuff. But right now, it's pretty much, I feel really bad for fantasy artists because I see these amazing fantasy artists and what they do. And it's sad to know that, a computer can go and spit out something similar, maybe not as much heart or whatever, but it's almost like, I think if you're a fantasy artist, you really have to show show your work.
There's
Comics,
no issues if it's Princess Bride illustrations for fantasy as 6-fingered men. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. So I mean, I just think there's I guess my point is you don't have to, if you're like Gary and if you don't want to do a live stream where you're drawing, it's not like oh well, then what do I do because I can't show my process. There's so many different ways you can do it depending on what level you're comfortable with. So.
Yeah.
So, well, then to get specifically to you, Scott, you do all your videos, both your current and then the previous incarnation.
Right.
It's very specific. It's like a very specific aspect of process. And I guess unless it's too big a question or you don't even remember, like what made you decide that's what you wanted to show people? That kind of thing. Like, do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, it's weird because it's kind of I sometimes I'll say, I'm going in this direction because of AI or whatever, because showing your work in this world. I think it was more serendipitous than that. I already planned on kind of going that direction when AI when it kind of became obvious what this could do and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh yeah, I think I really need to lean into, showing doing actual projects and things like that. Because even, I used to do live drawings and stuff. And like I said, I was doing sketches this weekend and stuff. And it's because you want to do your best work and you feel like if people are watching or whatever, it's like, ooh, you gotta kind of erase or whatever. And there's little things like that you do that you maybe don't want to show. And, right. When I do my videos, of course, one of the things I'm doing is streamlining everything. So there's certain things that I'm just like, oh, that particular version didn't come out. I'm not going to show that. And I'm just mining it for all the good stuff. So that's right. Different,
Yeah, you're editing. You're not doing a lot of real time.
Yeah,
you're
but
like
then I'll do
curating.
Live streams now, and it's not. Most of it isn't me drawing. I think I did one where I was drawing these gross stickers or something like that with Copic markers and stuff. But most of it's like just me cutting out, wax packs, assembling wax packs. And that's a little different because it's not, there's a difference between, I think, illustrating and that kind of stuff that's a little easier to do. And it's stuff that kind of stuff that I think even if you're not an illustrator or whatever, or you work in a different style or whatever the case is, most people, if you're watching a live stream of somebody drawing, unless it's like a Bob Ross video painting, they're not going to be up there doing exactly what you're doing. Like, oh, okay. Oh, that's that step. They're just kind of along for the ride type of thing.
Yeah.
The ones I'm doing now are kind of, well, maybe I can inspire people to kind of do the same thing. So I'm kind of showing that process to encourage people to do that.
So has the AI question changed your thought about what you're doing right now at all? Or is it just kind of validated what you've been doing all along?
It kind of valid. I guess, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It does validate kind of what I'm doing now. But if I was still, not that I'm not working on comics, because I'm working on a comic right now, in between talking to you guys, but I'm just not showing it for a number of reasons. And there's also reasons, like the reason why I'm not showing this current issue is because almost every page is a spoiler.
Right.
And I'm very much in the camp of, show your work as you do it as a way to promote it. But in this particular case, I just want to keep everything under wraps. But if I was still just doing my comic, I would be showing myself illustrating and doing all that stuff even now, even though I'm kind of doing something a little different, at least on YouTube.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I think so. Yeah.
Real quick too, Scott, it dawns on me because you were saying what you're doing on live streams is a little different, right? Because a lot of it's like assembling like wax packs and stuff like that.
Right.
But thinking about it, I think there is a connection there between the two things because to me as a consumer, right? If I'm looking on your website and I see wax packs, they look so good. They look so professional. I would almost imagine you shipped them to like a printer that made them.
Yeah, that's another.
They're really, and when you get them, like you guys will see, they look like authentic. They have the gum. They like really seem like an actual wax pack. The thing that's weird is a lot of people even separate that because even if it went to a factory, a lot of that assembly is still going to be done by hand, right?
Yeah,
but
and
my point is, when people get to watch you do it, right? Yeah. That adds value to those items.
Exactly. That's where I was going to go. Yeah. Because it justifies the price point.
Right.
Yeah.
No one's going to pay for a top.
Labor intensive.
Yeah. No one's going to pay, $15, $20 for a pack of Topps mass-produced trading cards unless it's a collector's item and they're limited quantity or whatever. But the reason why I have to charge that or get to charge that is because all the work that goes into it. So that does kind of help along when I do go and put these on my online store is you can see the work that goes into it. And then people are like, maybe he's not charging enough.
And people can look at it and see it's not an automated process.
Yeah.
Which is all AI really is like a big over automated process. But the point being, like, I think it serves a similar function, right?
Yeah. And also, because these are fan art and a lot of the stuff that I'm using is photography that, I don't really own. I'm trying to show that it's not just me slapping a bunch of pictures, that there's a lot of thought going into the design to make this look like it would have looked if it was like a retro wax pack. So even though I am using photographs, I'm also designing stuff. There's a lot of thought that goes into the way these things look.
I would argue the fact that you're working with an established property kind of makes your job harder because you're trying to make it look like consistent and right for the property. Where if you were making something up, you would have a lot more, I think, leeway in terms of what you were making.
Yeah, and I plan to do more of that stuff. Like I want to do like a full set, and I don't know if I should touch on this right now, but if you guys remember in the early days of NFTs, I started working on an NFT project before I kind of really understood the gravity of everything surrounding that. But anyway, I've got all this artwork that I'm like, all these different characters from this brand that I created for that they're just kind of sitting there. I'm like, these could make a set of gross trading cards. So I have stuff like that, and I have some other ideas of things that original stuff I want to do, as well as just the pre-existing entertainment properties that I'm doing cards with and stuff like that. So
I love that. Corey, what about you? Like, you got to rephrase your question because you're so much more eloquent to me, to Corey, just to kind of get
initially, I think the question was how has AI affected it for me? Not at all. It has had zero impact in how I choose to share content at all. And I don't know. Gary described my process as sermons. So I will try not to. To wax eloquent.
I was very careful to say affectionately. I actually enjoy your sort of essays on. Here's the thing we should be worried about. Yeah.
Corey,
but I'm trying not, and I appreciate that. I'm just trying not to launch into a sermon now. But I was actually looking for I know I've done a few videos on my answer of why I do this, and I was looking for them. And if you go back to like Artcasters 198 back when I was a guest, and there's a couple others like the internet mob mentality, what we can learn from the French Revolution. Those two kind of encapsulate why I share, because I think like a deep-seated core belief that I have is that hoarding knowledge is evil. And I really feel like sharing knowledge is kind of an egalitarian way of toppling power structures. And one of the things that I am very much for is destroying concentrated power structures and trying to balance them out with checks and balances and those types of things. And so, like in one of the things that caused the French Revolution, there's a lot of factors that kind of came into that. But one of the main ones that most people don't talk about is the encyclopedia. Like prior to the encyclopedia being published, knowledge was hoarded into secret societies or into guilds or into birthright, type of things. And so you had to be born into a situation where you were allowed the opportunity to read, or where you were allowed the opportunity to learn the secret rites of the blacksmith or whatever. And those that set out to write the encyclopedia, their initial intent was to bring knowledge to everyone, to destroy centralized power structures. And the original versions of that were very funny, as kind of like a takedown of, like the Catholic Church at the time was a very powerful political power, or monarchs or kings or those types of things. And so I have kind of always just shared my process, I think, as a matter of just who I am and who I'm trying to be. But then the other side of it is kind of what Scott was mentioning. I'm not fast. I don't produce a lot of work, or at least in my mind, I feel like I don't. When you get online, you're seeing people just bust stuff out all the time. And my way of kind of
watching Richard Fairgray, none of us are fast, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and so my way of kind of like keeping people interested in building an audience that is interested in my work is by way of saying like, hey, let's watch this time lapse video while I talk about something, or let me teach you this thing that I just learned. Also, I have a terrible memory for some types of things and a great memory for other types of things, and so I will often, as a byproduct of trying to remember stuff, create tutorial videos and behind the scenes things, because I know if I don't have to log that in my brain and my long-term memory because I've stored it, on YouTube or something, I can always recall that thing, right? And so it actually frees me up to think a lot differently. So there's weird stuff, but like I will often, and this is a very strange thing I recognize, but I will often, my students will make fun of me. They'll say, hey, do you know how to blah, 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 blah? And someone, usually this is about 4 or 5 weeks into the semester, will inevitably sarcastically say, actually, I've made a video on that. Because I can remember the title and the thumbnail. I can't necessarily remember the technique or the button or the keystrokes or the program or the plugin. And so I'm like card cataloging information. And as a natural byproduct of that, I'm also sharing my process because I'm kind of doing that. I have to do the weirdest, stupid hacks to just function as a normal adult. And that's just some of it. But yeah, anyway, so I like it for that. And I like it that it increases the value of the work. And I think some of my stuff maybe isn't good enough as much as I want it to be, communicating on its own, that having explanations of some of those ideas that I'm trying to get across going along with it helps. So, yeah.
Well, I'm reacting to you saying that maybe the work isn't, did you say good enough for people to get what you're trying to say. I mean, I think I would question that premise. I mean, I think the meaning of a work not being easily apparent is not, I don't think that's necessarily something to aspire to personally, you know.
Sure.
And I think, like, you know, imagine if David Lynch was worried about making sense.
Yeah.
Well, and I do have projects where it's just out there and I don't care what people think. But I mean, last year specifically, I was trying to communicate specific things and get people to think about specific things.
You felt like it was.
So I mean, you look at an image with a three-eyed cat floating above a crab, unplugging things, and there's a slave leg coming out of a pyramid, and I don't know that everybody looks at that and goes, yeah, maybe I should put my phone down for a few minutes every day.
This is a little bit of a tangent, but it's a story I told Jim on the phone a few weeks ago. I was listening to an interview with Terry Gilliam, and I think the question he was asked was, do you care if the audience understands what you're trying to say with a movie? And he said, absolutely not. Like, it was a quick answer, like, no, it doesn't matter to me. And as an example, he said, I remember I had done the movie 12 Monkeys, and this woman sent me a letter saying, I love 12 Monkeys. It's the most brilliant work you've ever made. And I can see all the things you did in it. 12 monkeys, 12 apostles. The main character's initials are JC, Jesus Christ. Like, she saw all this, like, it's clearly the New Testament. Like, this is about the New Testament, and you have all these things here, and I saw this, and I saw that, and I'm so impressed that you put all these things in there, and you hit them just enough, but I saw them. And he's like, and Terry Gilliam said, none of it true. Like, none of it intentional, none of it what I was putting in there. But I was delighted that she had such a great experience with the movie, with her own fantasy of what it was. I personally think I would be very uncomfortable if someone was reading DVSM and had this crazy far out, like totally missing the mark thing. I think I'm probably closer to what I'm hearing from you, which is I would like them to at least get a sense of what I'm doing here and not be too far off. But hearing that made me think maybe I need to practice this idea of.
So to clarify, once you realized that you were more in line with my way of thinking, you decided immediately to change how you were thinking. Just to revolt against, I don't want to be like that. That's ridiculous.
No, yeah. So I'm appalled. You showed me how appalling this idea is. No, I actually, I think, like I said, I think I'm closer to you on the spectrum of how do you care what the audience is getting out of your work?
Yeah, and I vary quite a bit. A lot of my stickers, I have never described what I meant by them, and I find it endlessly fascinating to hear what other people think it means. In fact, one of the ones that I made where my intention was to talk about government surveillance was a wasp with a camera on its head, and I sold a bunch of them, and I bumped into somebody who bought one, and he was describing to me how excited he was to have something to use in his drone club. And I was like, oh, that was the opposite of, but that's great. Right. And so I have all these people flying drones in the park with my government surveillance sticker on the back of their.
Right. Yeah. Not at all exactly almost the opposite of what you hoped, but that's fine.
It's fun. No, I was excited that they found a different meaning in it. And but like, I'm fine with that. I guess if I'm circling back, I do a lot of research, just to satiate my curiosity, right? Just to kind of, just because I want to continue to be creative, and so I reward my brain every time I'm curious about something by researching that thing. And when I find something that is interesting enough to spawn a work, an image, an animation, or something, it is very difficult for me to keep that to myself, because that also feels like things that people should know. Like it excited and inspired me, to kind of do that. And I don't know, you go back through my YouTube and you can see the eras of the kind of rabbit holes that I was falling down, and there was a period in time where everybody was like, why is this guy talking about, Spartan hoplites so much? It's because I listened to 114 hours of lectures about ancient Greece, and
Yep.
And like,
it's hard not to just say, let me talk about this, and you might as well just show your process of what you're making as you're talking about it. So,
well, but I mean, to me, and like I kind of said sort of in the beginning, is like that's a perfect illustration of process.
Sure.
Like you're encountering a thing, you're getting enraptured by it, or whatever word you want to use, and that is now informing the art you're doing, and you're intentionally or not, for the audience, you're illustrating the A to B. You're showing like, I found this thing, I had a thought, and now my art is really being informed by it. And next week there'll be a new thing, and then that's my art's going to be colored by that. I think that's also an aspect of it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, and then I'm more specific at times, where if I'm writing a course at a collegiate level, like I also feel like I shouldn't hide that information behind a tuition paywall. And so most of the courses that I've produced, you can find all of the content, not get the individual interaction and personal feedback, but you can find all that content on YouTube. And so there are kind of like, here are the effects of a creative process, where I'm kind of sharing what I'm learning and things like that. But then it's also like where I specifically spell out, like, here are the steps and scientific backing behind the steps of becoming creative and of maintaining a creative lifestyle and those types of things. And I will say that none of my videos do extremely well, but those do very poorly. So like, I do think people are slightly more interested in, kind of the fun rabbit holes than they are like, here's how you become creative.
Here's my last question for you. I wish I had a pipe. I wish I did for this, because this is going to be
bubble pipe.
I do need a pipe. I want to ask
some leather patches on a tweed
jacket. I
Yeah.
want to ask like an armchair therapist question for you. Corey, tell us the first time you remember having information withheld from you and being upset about it.
Yeah, I don't think that's a thing. I think
it's a recurring theme in everything you're saying.
Sure.
Is like,
yes, it is.
Know things. If I know something, you need to know it too.
Yeah, and I think I've identified. What's that, Josh?
We're gonna have like a straight up like lifetime moment where it's gonna be Gary saying, "It's not your fault, Corey," and he's gonna
try to.
Shut up, Gary. He's gonna tear his shirt. He's gonna have.
We're gonna try to hug and realize that we're not in the same place. No,
we all have drums out and we're playing a circle, even though we're technically a rectangle at this point. But
I have huge problems with oppression of any kind. It bothers me to no end. And I'm not somebody who's like a redistribution guy or anything like that. But I really am bothered by oppression, and I think religiously, I was raised in a culture that often taught about how priests were the only ones that were allowed to read the Bible at certain times, and that was a form of control that kind of irked me. And then socially, when you see that at times, not always, but at times, the only difference between somebody who is held down by poverty and somebody who is not is that they have information, that they have learning, they have skills, they have those opportunities to kind of do those things. It's very difficult for me to look at those situations and say, I know this thing and I want to hoard it.
Right.
And so I don't know that. I mean, I've been on some construction crews and some landscaping crews where, there's the older guy that doesn't want to tell the younger guy how to do stuff because his body is failing. and he feels threatened. But I think really it's really more about like, if I've seen this happen, learning specific things can change the trajectory of someone's life for the better. You know, I mean, just being an artist, like not being able to do this versus being able to do this is literally the difference between I can create something that didn't exist before that can feed my family, whereas otherwise I can't, you know. And yeah, so I don't know if it's like a trauma trigger or if it's just me like being very annoyed. I think there's plenty of supply in the world, and it bothers me that stupid power hungry people are causing large segments of the world population to suffer because they're hoarding supplies and information. And I mean, you look at a lot of places in the world that are impoverished, and it's a lot of people disagree with me, but the statistics back me up. It's usually not a racial divide. It's usually not an ethnic divide. It is almost always a poverty divide that is causing a lot of the types of oppression that are kind of happening out there. And if you can get people to learn certain things or know certain things or not prevent them from being able to kind of rise above those situations, it literally changes generations worth of people's lives. And so now I just feel super high and mighty, and I'm going to ride off into the sunset on my very tall horse.
I fully expect your next art piece to be a dragon on top of just a mountain of doling it out to so this is good. What I wanted.
A multi-headed dragon with all the leaders of the world on each head. Yeah.
Corey, you know our joke that we're always kind of like synced weirdly? I have never... today's one of those days where I totally feel that too, because I literally, before we even started streaming, was talking about one of the frustrations when teaching is when you have somebody who's being given knowledge and they don't understand the value of knowledge. Like they're not hungry for it. And I was talking about Frederick Douglass, and I was like, Frederick Douglass himself from slavery and arguably was one of the ignitions of the entire following generations of civil rights movements. And it's literally all of that came from, you can oppress people and put them in horrible situations, and they will accept their fate unless they can know more. And when they know more, you can't put the genie back in the bottle and keep suppressing those people. And so I agree. Anyhow, what Corey's talking about, sharing knowledge being kind of the key, I think I resonate with that a lot, because like for me, part of my sharing process is just about for me, my ethic on it is I just am a big fan of vulnerability. And so I'm uncomfortable drawing in front of people, so I stream drawing in front of people because it makes me vulnerable. And it's a challenge, and it's kind of weird, and I kind of like it. I also just like the vulnerability of storytelling, and I think that, we've talked ad nauseum about it, but it's about authenticity, and that's the one thing you're never going to get from AI. It might look authentic, but an algorithm is not thinking anything. That's what I like about it.
I attended a YouTube conference a number of years ago called Vid Summit. And there was a PhD candidate who was delivering her dissertation. And my colleague and I were probably the only people in the room, at least we were the only ones that looked shocked and astounded. Everyone else seemed to be taking copious notes. Her dissertation, she had done an entire PhD analysis of how to appear authentic on YouTube. And she was delivering like the variables of the equation that help you promote the appearance of being authentic. And I was just looking around the room going, am I the only one that is just like choking on irony right now?
Right.
Yeah. I feel like you've lost the plot a little bit if you start going, okay, let's break down how to be authentic. It's like, oh, come on.
Right.
Like,
People perceive authenticity when you display the following characteristics.
yeah. Punk rock music sounds like this, and hip hop music sounds like this. It's a way to bring it back to our guest Gary. It's a way to fancy white the situation a little bit with what should just be pretty obvious, So Gary, I don't know.
By the
like,
way,
for me,
I
like,
have no idea. Had I known that would take such a life of its own,
you'd create a meme.
I still would have said it. I would have said it,
Yeah.
but I mean, yeah.
You would have said it. You just would have
What I
would have
do
capitalized on it
using
first
that
with
term
some
with
merch.
people. Yeah.
what my problem with how it's evolved is it's gone from me critiquing fancy white to being a fancy white, which I don't know how that it's like I've become the thing I hated the most. It's,
He doth protest too much, methinks.
It makes no sense. Okay. Anyway,
I feel like-
continue with your question.
I feel like with the process of sharing, there is a level of vulnerability involved in it, and I think I think it has been. I'm glad that you had the idea of having all of us kind of chime in on it, because it is interesting seeing everyone's take on it.
Right.
Corey had like a very nuanced reason, right? All of us have nuanced reasons, but it's interesting to hear the mix of reasons, and also the mix of approach, because it matches the reasons. So like
Right.
Corey will do some stuff that's like really raw, stuff, a lot of stream of consciousness, thoughts about like you was saying about the hoplites or something, talking about rabbit holes he's going down. But at the same time, he'll do really clean edited stuff as well that's still sharing knowledge, right? And showing a little bit behind the curtain. Scott is like, doing some live streams that are kind of interactive and stuff like that. But in general, with a lot of his art stuff, it's very like edited, but it's still showing you behind the curtain, right? But he is showing you only what he won't do behind the curtain, right? It's a little more curated.
Mm-hmm.
Gary, with you, it sounds like it's under the hood of the thoughts. Am I wrong on that? Like to me,
Yeah,
that's
no,
kind of
I think so.
the best description of that.
I guess what's interesting is, it's funny. I think of it as, I just try to walk people through the process, but we're all doing that. We're all doing that. It's like, okay, well, what do I mean when I say that? I guess I'm trying to walk people through the thought, what's going on, in here. I'm not doing so much the visible, the conspicuous act. I'm not doing the live draws. I'm not doing the this is how you place an order on Comics Wellspring, and this is what all the options mean. Like, I'm not doing any of that stuff. I'm trying to let people into this is what I'm thinking about when I'm doing this. And this is how I'm deciding whether this is good or bad. And this is how the mentality I want when I'm working, and this is a distraction for me. This is, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I'm getting more, I think, into the
headier stuff. Yeah.
At least the in your head stuff, like the invisible stuff. That's maybe the best way to sum it up. I'm trying to illuminate the invisible aspect, and also just a little my life. It's something that people sometimes would tease me about in the past, was like, you're not actually doing any artwork. It's like, no, but I'm just talking about movies I like, or I'm talking about a book I read, or I'm talking about, a trip I went on. Like, it's just, I'm trying to let you into this is this is what an artist looks like. This is just an artist's life. And, but then also, the invisible stuff.
I like that. I like the thought of, and I don't know if this is ever possible, right? But for me, one of the main reasons I like doing live streams is I'm going to be at art school drawing anyway. And cartooning is a really lonely business. And so it's fun to be able to kind of create this digital bullpen where you're hanging out with other people and sharing a moment, even if it's just drawing together. I think that's really cool. thing, and that's another thing you're never really going to get with like an automated system, is the feeling of being in a room drawing with other artists.
Right.
Um, I guess you could have like a bunch of typists in a room or something, but it just doesn't seem to me like that would have the same vibe.
Not the same.
But also, I think that in theory, and I don't know if I have like the most successful career to like back this up, but in theory, I think that when you invite people along, whether it's like raising the curtain a little bit, right, to show teases of the process or whatever, or it's just fully opening the curtain and exposing everything, or it's hey, we're gonna look like behind this segment of it. I think when you do that, it creates a connection with people that otherwise you're not really going to have. And it allows them like to have scenarios like Corey said, where maybe he made something that's a little abstract, right? And there's plenty of art. I mean, like if anybody thinks that's wrong to have art that doesn't instantly answer, it's like walk through an art museum and tell me that's still your take on it, because there's some really beautiful work that you might experience walking through a gallery where you may not even be able to articulate why you like it.
Right.
And part of what Corey and I and Scott and Gary has to do, right? All of us have had times where either you're educating a classroom or a client on helping them articulate what they like and why, and use words like to try to paint the visual.
Yeah.
But still, I'm sure we still have moments where you watch like a great movie and you're like, man, I got to think about that for like a month before I can process like why I like that movie.
Well,
and I
not
love that.
mention,
Yeah.
not to mention art that either because it's so deep in the past or it's a totally different culture, like you don't have the context to even, you'll never understand it in the way that it was intended because it's just too far removed.
Yeah, or you'll get it wrong anyway. Like I've definitely had times where I really like a painter and then I read about them and I'm like, I don't like them at all, and I don't like what they were thinking when they were painting this, but I like the painting. Like, so it's like there's that interesting part. I do think it's to me it's like Gary was saying, when you're younger, you would have like really died to have that interaction with an artist. Same thing here. Like when, growing up, when I was playing music and stuff, we'd watch like rockumentaries and stuff, and we'd watch like VH1s behind the music because we didn't have really quite the internet environment where you can just go online and watch a guitarist break down how a chord is played, right? And so we're just gathering information from like everything from like, the Doors movie to like, to like, some rockumentary on a band we don't even like, but it's just fascinating, right? And just getting those glimpses a little bit in the curtain of the performance of the whole thing was like really cool, and I always have been a fan of that. Here's a quick question for all of you, starting with Gary. Do you feel like it's mostly intentional? And Gary, right back at you, the question about intensifying because of AI. And then second point, do you think that maybe it's also just a personality thing where you like to share those kind of things in general? So I don't know. Why don't you kick that one off?
It's hard to separate that. I think because I've been such a proponent the past few months of artists need to share the process, artists need to, let the audience in a little bit so they can appreciate the difference between this and other things. Now's the time, I'm getting to the point where I'm going to be streaming again, and I feel like, well, now's the time to walk the walk. And so what would I do differently? Like what, and again, always being authentic, not taking the little seminar and how do I seem really authentic in this, or how do I seem really, but like, what do I want to showcase? If I'm going to show people an aspect of the process or aspects of the process, aspects of the artist's life, what do I want them to have as takeaways? What do I think is fair, like representative? And also, I don't love this word. If I had more time, I'd think of a better one, but sells it a little bit, because I have been feeling very strongly I want to be evangelical about the creative process, which is something that you don't get with AI. I want people to see, like, a point I was making in the stream I did was that setting apart all the weird concerns about AI that are out there, to me, the most fundamental sin of it is you're denying yourself the experience of making something, which I think is, the best part of it. The best part of it isn't ending up with, like, I painted this in my oil painting class and putting it on a wall. That's not the best part. The best part is doing it. The best part is learning how to do it. The best part is getting a feel and, like, wow, this is actually coming out, and going and buying paints and going and picking out brushes and, like, finally getting somewhere. Like, that's the part that you're not having that. And it makes me sad that people might think that this weird counterfeit process is equivalent and somehow, because, well, I made a thing too. I'm saying, like,
that stream where you mentioned the sports thing as an analogy too, where it's like, or was that a different Artcasters episode? I'm getting the two confused, but I know that someone, and I think it was you, Gary, but I don't know, was kind of making an analogy to part of why people like watching humans play sports.
Right, is the story, right? And I like
the story of overcoming those odds. Yeah,
right. And the point I've made, I just think, again, like, risking it getting into an AI conversation, I think the problem is just a basic lack of art literacy and art appreciation in our culture. And to me, the evidence of that, the example I give is, if Boston Dynamics made a robot that could do the breaststroke, we wouldn't want to see it in the Olympics. And even if it got in the Olympics, we wouldn't be that impressed with it, because we know intuitively what's interesting about the Olympics is these people have spent their whole lives to be the best in the world at doing this thing, and they've sacrificed and they've worked hard and they've done all these different things to their body, and they have these crazy diets, and they've, and now they're here, and now we get to see what a lifelong commitment to being great looks like. That's part of the fascination. I think we're not consciously thinking about that. We just know it. But somehow with art, we don't have that. And you can apparently, like, have a robot do a painting and put it up, and it's like, well, that's sort of the same. Like, we're not seeing how, no, it should be exactly the same as the robot in the Olympics example. It should be exactly the same as, this isn't interesting to me, because there's no human story in that. So I
think the difference might be the performative nature of an exhibition versus the dross or the result of an experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I can't compare the exhibition of sports to the experience of creation in the same way, because one is like intentionally made to be performed, and the other one I can still gain that experience through the experience of creation, whether other people know that thing exists or not.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm understanding you, and I think,
like, music not performed live might be a better one-to-one on that, I guess. Would it, Corey?
Maybe. Like, I'm thinking more with the Olympics, the robot in the Olympics example, I'm thinking more of the audience experience of it than the creative experience of it.
Yeah, the robot in the Olympics I've used many, many times since I've heard you say that, because I think it is an excellent example. But I don't think it's a one-to-one correlation to art, because I can have a transcendent experience in creation that no one else knows about.
Right.
And the result of that might suck. Like, I might have had a deeply moving experience, and then the painting is just bad. And so other people look at it and they see this end result, the thing that came after or came out of this experience that I had. And so, whereas the performative nature of an exhibition is is being viewed, the transformative internal experience that I'm having during the process of creation is unviewable, but the result is viewable.
Right. No, that's true. I mean, look, not a perfect analogy, but I think
Sorry.
I guess my point in it, the reason I truck it is it makes people question, why do we have like a visceral yeah, I liked Jim's thing. Why do we have a visceral disinterest in the robot in the Olympics? That like a lot of people out there will hedge and kind of try to find like exceptions and, well, it's different and whatever, or they don't see any, they don't think it's comparable at all when it comes to, robot painting and painting.
So what if we did something like this? I'm sorry to tear down your analogy because I really like it.
No.
No, I really do like it. But I actually think a better analogy is if there were a group of people that were arguing for drug-fueled cybernetic enhancements that allowed them to compete at an Olympic level,
right?
And then claimed that everybody was gatekeeping them by keeping them out of the Olympics.
Well, that's a more one-to-one. And then like another one-to-one would be, I just had it and it slipped away from me. God damn it. Oh, well.
Well, we're talking about that.
But I think, I guess, so this is where it gets into like, there's an absurdity to a robot doing the breaststroke, which is why, part of why I like it. Anyway, the point, here's the point that I was like, in my very human body breaststroking towards. I think I want to start selling people, and I hate this language, but it's the easiest. Selling people on the joy that comes from the struggle and doing the work, and how satisfying it is and how gratifying it is and how you learn so much about yourself and how it's, my life, and it eventually results in a piece of work which is less important than the actual, it's such a cliche, but less important than the journey that it took to get there. And so to do that, I think this is where it's like, how is it changing me? I've never been one, and I've always been very critical of artists who go online or vlog or blog or whatever and talk about like, oh, it's going bad and nothing's working and I don't know if I'm going to make rent this month. And it's just kind of mope, Eeyore, talk like all
art. It's not art unless you suffered, Gary.
Yeah, exactly. but all I'm getting is the suffering. Like I'm never hearing, you know, I've never been that way, but I think what I would like to do, and I don't want to, be silly about it or unrealistic about it or hide like the tough or the struggle or whatever.
Yeah.
But I want to try and every once in a while remind myself and the audience, like, I love doing this. Yes. I am in no way looking for an escape hatch. This is exactly how I want to spend my weekend. This is exactly how I want to spend my evening. It may be frustrating. It may be difficult sometimes. I may be unhappy with the limitations of my ability or skill or whatever. I might feel, like, oh, it's not coming together the way I want it or whatever the thing is. But don't get me wrong. I love this and would not want to be doing anything else. And like, I think that's the thing that is, with the AI thing, it's like, I want to make sure that's coming across, even in the most frustrated moments.
This is reminding me. So a good friend of mine, Alan Noble, has written a lot of stuff recently, especially articles and stuff. And it all time like is on getting out of bed, which you guys should all read. It's great. But he has been doing a lot of dissecting of like the culture's overselling of the idea of technique, like technique above everything. So it's all about efficiency and technique. Yeah. And we've kind of become culture that's efficient and techniqued ourselves into being inhuman. And it kind of misses the forest for the trees. And he pointed this out recently, and it kind of opened my eyes to it because I've paid attention to him talking about that. I never connected that with AI. And he was basically saying AI, the ultimate result of technique over everything. because at the end of the day, AI is going to get to the point where that's what it's really good at. It is efficient and it's technique, but it bypasses all the strength and all the beauty and all the real meaning behind the thing in the first place. And so at the cost of technique, right?
Right.
I guess an example would be like, if you're thinking like efficiency and technique focused, if you're like trying to climb a mountain, which a lot of people view this as like an existential experience, right? And humans have felt that way about climbing mountains for years. I don't understand that one. I don't understand, because to me, I don't even want to climb my staircase or like the steps to my door, but like it's, it is a long lasting thing for human beings, like take on a challenge, like trying to get to the top of a mountain. And the technique version of that is, just take a helicopter and take your photo at the top of the mountain and at the bottom,
Right.
right? And you're
Right.
set, and you don't even have to deal with the harrowing possibilities of dying on the way up, right?
Right.
But and in theory, that is more efficient. It gets the same results, end results and beginning results. But like you were saying, Gary, that kind of that middle part, as cliche as like the journey is the destination and all, that middle part
Right.
is so
Well,
important. That human
Or
part.
you can imagine if someone, wants to ride a moped through the Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, it's missing the point of like why you're doing a marathon.
Yeah.
And again, it's like it's getting, but this also gets all the way back to process versus product. Like product is finishing the race. Product is getting to the top of the mountain. Product is having something to hang on your wall. But it's missing, like you just said, missing the forest for the trees. Your efficiency is, I feel like, not a virtue of creativity. Efficiency is a virtue of capitalism or something. Efficiency is a virtue of an assembly line. Like, I don't know, that shouldn't even factor into it. But to me, again, probably not a great example, a little bit like the, robot in the Olympics one. Like, if I want to ride my moped through the Boston Marathon and say, like, I finished the Boston Marathon too, it was great, felt great. Like, everyone would know, like, well, that's not the same. It's not the same. But again, when it comes to AI art, somehow it's like, well, I don't know, maybe what's the difference? It's like, and that's why, going back to the beginning, I think it's important to show people why it's different. You need to see someone putting foot left, right, left, right, left, right through a whole marathon to understand why that's different.
I have the perfect ad for the last 5 minutes. Okay, so this is an advertisement that Harley Davidson came out with, and it said, somewhere on an airplane, a man is trying to rip open a small bag of peanuts. And I've done this, right? I love everything that this ad is saying, because he's on the open road. You can continue and say, give us life at ground level, rolling along the endless highway on a Harley Davidson, 100% depressurized, just sunlight on chrome, the voice of a V-twin ripping the open air, and elbow room stretching all the way to the horizon. The idea of this ad is the perfect example of what everybody is missing when they continue to talk about the end result instead of the process, because technically the person on the jet will get there faster and be significantly more comfortable. It's a more efficient and effective way to make that journey, and he will be worse off for it. And whereas I have driven, I've done 966 miles in a day and a half on a Harley before. I've done 3,500 miles over the course of several weeks, and slept on the beach and under freeway passes and things. And it was the least efficient way to do that. But those trips that I've taken and those things are some of the most formative core memories that I have, because I cooked dehydrated eggs for homeless people on the side of a gas station until the cops came. Like, I had experiences that you cannot have with the efficiency and comfort of modern amenities. And so everybody who is doing anything to shortcut the creative experience will be worse off for having done that, because they, one, won't have those experiences. They will not be transformed by that. And two, they think they will have.
Yes.
So they're in this
Yeah.
state of delusion and lying to themselves, calling themselves an artist, or trying to come up with some sort of fancy way to describe typing words into a robot that spits things out for you. And it's like, you can name it whatever you want, but you're still a hack.
I love
There you go, everybody. Now, well, no, I love this
See, that's a
analogy.
sermon that we'll say amen to.
There we go. I mean, we got Corey to say hack, everybody. We're done here. We're done here.
Okay. All right.
So, no,
All right.
I love that analogy. We're done. We're done, everybody. I love that analogy because I was going to say, like you said it yourself. Driving 1,000 miles on a bike is going to teach you things about yourself that you
It's
never
hard.
would have learned if you had flown. And to me, that is exactly the case, at least from my experience, spending a year drawing a comic book. Like I would not trade that experience for anything. And that's part of my disinterest in that whole movement of like, well, you could not do any of that. You could just sort of describe DVSM into a prompt thing and you could get it. It's like, but then I wouldn't have that experience. You're missing again.
Yeah.
It's process. It's not product. Like I'm not
Yeah.
trying. Like, why don't I just skip it all entirely? Look, someday, as the saying goes, all graves go untended. Eventually, like someday someone's not even going to know DVSM existed. Why don't I just be really efficient and not make them?
Right.
It's crazy talk. It's crazy talk.
Yeah.
Wouldn't go so far as calling anyone a hack, but it's crazy talk.
I'll call him a hack all day.
Yeah, I will second that, but I'd also say, I think that there's another thing about this too. With I'm trying to think of a way to word this perfectly. Okay, it's basically that the problem is, honestly, some of this we brought on ourselves as commercial artists. I've been a commercial artist for a long time. And when I started in commercial art, I very much had the opinion of art is a commodity, right? It's to be traded. We should be treated like plumbers, right? Like we should be paid fairly. I agree with all of that still.
Sure.
But there's a part I missed as a young artist that I get now. And I think is more important than any of, and that actual uncomfortable art with a capital A conversation. And that needs to be back in the vogue of illustrators and cartoonists as well, because what's going to happen is AI will be commercial art at some point. And it sucks. But what about art? Will AI ever be art, the actual art? Right, or commercial art with a capital A, and that's a vague, harder conversation for people to have, but that does have a lot to do with artist experience, with suffering along the way. As cliche as it is, the suffering's part of the art. Not that all artists are suffering, but the act of suffering in the process of making art is part of the process, right? The act of joy and elation, all of this stuff that people have talked about with art for years. Snobs have talked about it with art, and kind of like the thing that annoys Corey, they gate kept it for a long time, that process, right? Like only 4 guys could understand beauty when looking at art, right? And that's ridiculous. I don't want to gatekeep, but my point is, I think we do need to start bringing things back into that art conversation, real art, because I think that's the issue here. Because can AI make a product? 100%.
100%. Yeah, but there is a distinction, and I think that's a valuable distinction. I do also think, though, yes, I mean, this whole suffering artist thing that's sort of like the sad clown comedian thing that's kind of ridiculous. Maybe kind of ridiculous, sometimes true, mostly ridiculous. Though, I'll put a little asterisk on it, and this is just my opinion. I just, as a general rule, think an uninteresting person can't make interesting art, and I think what makes an interesting person is life experiences. and that means all kinds, not just like, it was pretty great. I grew up on a farm and nothing bad ever happened, and I ate a lot of macaroni salad, and now I paint paintings. I guarantee you those paintings are bullshit. I mean, I could be wrong. I just gotta have a feeling, I just have a feeling.
I don't know. They have some really great renderings
artists
of
need to suffer,
Mac
but
salad.
artists need to live. Like, they need to live.
Yeah. They do make great pictures of macaroni salad, though, artists. Excellent.
So Dylan has an interesting kind of question in the chats here that I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit, because it got me thinking. Do you think the emotions, heart, flame, are necessary to partake in art? I saw comments in the anti-AR art Facebook post, and they said that they don't have the emotional part while being an artist. I don't necessarily want to I kind of hate the discussion like what is art, just because I don't know,
we've had to have it too many times.
I don't know. I feel pretentious, and I don't like the way I feel when I have that discussion. And I feel a little bit like a gatekeeper as well. If you call it art, whatever, I don't care. You can call it whatever you want. But I do think that there is a principle that is inherent in the creation of this world, in the sphere of existence that we live in. Good things must be paid for, and if you want that transcendent experience, if you want to reach that flow state, if you want the runner's high, there is a price to pay. And I don't want to. I kind of agree with Gary. I don't want to necessarily promote this idea of suffering as whatever. But sometimes that suffering, that struggle, that frustration, that whatever, is the reason that the payoff is good, right? And so any good thing that comes without a price, you will pay on the back end. So I have a deeply committed relationship with my wife that comes with physical intimacy and emotional intimacy and spiritual connection and a lot of those types of things. And I can chemically induce a lot of those feelings on the short term with meth or coke or whatever, right? In a very intense and short-term thing. Or yogurt. And I will pay the price on the back end, right? But paying the price on the front end, those things are not hollow, than they are real, right? And so I actually think that that success at completion that is earned, it lasts, and it doesn't feel hollow. But after the novelty wears off, are these people going to still have, the euphoric feeling, the temporary feeling of achievement, typing in a word and spitting out an image after nobody cares because everybody's just like, oh yeah, well, it's just AI and it just does that. After they're not getting the adulation, after there's no more novelty, will they continue to do it? I doubt it. And that's when they're going to pay on the back end. But I will continue to make art and be creative and write books and do things because I'm paying on the front end, and I sustain it over long periods of time. Just like Gary was saying, you will never trade spending an entire year of your free time making something. I bet you would if you could snap your fingers and produce a book once a day. Eventually, the novelty of that would wear off, and you'd be like, all right, well, who cares? Because you're not paying on the front end, and so there's no value on the back end.
Also, the reason I think that the art thing is an important discussion, not a what is art kind of thing, but things that I think culturally people just kind of get feeling art and they can't explain why. It's just art. There's a good example of, and now I'm blanking out on this dude's name, this guy who lived in a basement for years and created an entire world in a scrapbook and died. Nobody ever saw it. He had coworkers.
Yeah,
tell
I have the
things about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it's beautiful work. If you see this guy's work, it's also a little psychotic. There's parts
a little
of it
pervy, a little weird,
a little pervy, a little mentally, But the weird thing is the craft and the dedication and the obsession of it is undeniably art. This guy is undeniably left a body of work. Now, we can't say that the end result was important. At least to me, it's like, I'm not going to say that guy's work wasn't art. I think it was. I don't think most people would argue with that. But it takes a couple things off the table. One is it had no audience in his lifetime.
Right.
He saw no final result, so he never reached the mountain, right? And yet it's art, and this guy, and I think most people think, wow, what a beautiful thing that this thing exists, as weird and strange and stuff as it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
AI could spit that out in a week.
So you're
And-
sucking
and
me
what
in,
I'm
Josh.
saying
You're
is-
sucking me in.
What I'm saying is that capital A art conversation is the deciding factor in this conversation. As
Well,
much as
and
it's
I think
annoying,
the
although I
difference-
don't on this stream don't think we should get into the what is art thing. But do
Let
you
me-
get what I'm getting?
Well, let me see if because as you were talking, I have a question and I don't have an answer to it, but I'm fascinated in what you guys have to say, and this kind of brings it back. Is there a driving force? Like I've been talking, at least during this stream, very selfishly about the results that I get from doing this. Right? It's all an internal thing. That's me. But I think, if I'm being honest, one of the reasons that I like sharing my process is also human connection. Like I'm lonely. Like I am I am around a bunch of people that I like, but not a bunch of people that understand me. And I don't live in a community that has a very many artists or any of those types of things. And so do you think that a big part of art or a big part of sharing your process is human connection? Because we are social animals. We seek that out. Humans in isolation do very poorly physically and mentally and emotionally. I mean, it's almost essential that we are tribal, community-based, family-based unit type creatures.
Yeah, I do, though. Like with it was that artist Josh? It was it Darger?
Yes.
Harvey. Yeah.
think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think he's an example of. Yeah, I would, if I had to answer in a word, if you gave me a test in Corey's class, and you think art is at the end of the day, oh, excuse my cat, expression, I would say yes. Though, so is writing in a diary, in a way. I think,
Sure.
I would say that humans are sort of configured to want to try and express.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
if there isn't necessarily an audience, even if there isn't necessarily a listener, and there is something about that process that's meaningful or magical or significant in some way. So I think, generally speaking, yes, that art at its purest is about, I want to express something, and hopefully you'll receive the message and we'll have some kinship. We'll be able to share this. You'll at least understand me a little bit better, or we'll share an experience. You've had the same one or something. There'll be some kind of a communication there. But I don't know if that's a necessary element, because I think what Darger was doing is art, and I'm not convinced he ever intended anybody to see it. I think those were basically messages in a bottle, and that can be art too. So I think as long as you're trying to say something, and you're taking the time to say it, which goes back to something you were saying before, like if you don't care enough about whatever you're trying to say or whatever art you're trying to make, to spend the time to do it, to make it, why should I care about? Why should I care about seeing it? Why should there's something like that to me is like the inherent bias I have when it comes to AI imagery. It's like no one cared enough to make this. Like no one cared enough to make this. They cared enough to describe it to somebody, but no one wanted to bother making this. And like, so why should I care about it? Like there's no emotional interest in this.
What comes to mind, imagine kind of back in like the time of like ragtime, where like to be a really killer ragtime pianist, even to this day, like I've met pianists, right? And a killer ragtime pianist is so respected by classical pianists, by almost anyone. It's one of the hardest things to do because you both have to have formality down and improvisation down and timing down, right? One of the hardest things to do. So imagine like back in the day, ragtime is the killer thing. It's the top form of pop music. And you go to this piano bar and you watch, ragtime pianists just knock it out of the park. Imagine the novelty the first time somebody brings a sheet-fed piano that plays it better, doesn't miss a note, right?
Right.
And imagine the discussions among ragtime pianists. How many people nowadays would go pay to see a sheet-fed piano automatically play music?
Right.
Quite a few, but
And
how many
that's
would pay
basically-
twice?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Because the novelty is there, just like you said in the example.
Yeah.
And today, I think the novelty would be there in the, that this was made in what year? But then after that, it's just, like I worked for a guy that owned, as a collector, several of those kind of like automated instruments
cool.
that they made those
Yeah.
back in the day. And they're cool. But then after a day or two, it was just something in the hallway that I had to walk around to get to my office.
Mm.
It just after the novelty wears off of those type of automated things, I would never get to the point where I'm like, I've got to walk around this pianist that's serenading us all day in the office. Like, I think I would be in constant awe that there's just a dude just sitting there playing the piano. But eventually the machine doing it, it's like, it's still doing the thing it was built to do. Whoop-de-doo,
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
Who cares? Yeah.
Well, and it's probably again, it's part of okay, I have a bias towards someone playing the piano over a machine doing it that I recognize isn't totally rational. Probably it's very, very, very difficult to make a piano that plays on its own. Like maybe
I
even
would admire the mechanic who
And
built
I
it.
would be very...
I admire that.
I would be and I'd be extremely interested. I'd be extremely
very
interested
interested.
in watching the behind the scenes of that guy do it and having him explain it to me and having him share his process. I would love that.
Right.
Or the people,
That's
who
interesting,
build
but
the
there's
sheets
some-
or fin it that caused the
Yeah.
piano to do that. Like that's now we're talking something interesting.
That-
Or
and
the
to see,
again,
that's
tying
the
it to
difference,
AI,
because-
the programmer. That's interesting.
because
the programmers, those are artists. The AI
Right.
programmers. Yeah.
And because I'm oriented towards the person doing it,
Yeah.
first of all, I would rather see a person playing the piano. And second best would be I'd rather see the guy who makes the piano that plays itself talking about it or building it. That like least the bottom of the list is watching this mechanical piano play. And that's just my personal taste because basically what's precipitating this whole video is that's not interesting to me. Watching a machine do something is not that interesting to me. Learning about the guy who figured out how to build a machine that would do it is sort of cool.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I'm more interested, again, and it gets back to the Olympian. I'm interested in the person who worked to get to the point where they could do this. I'm kind of interested in the person who had to learn how to play the piano.
And I think that's because we are wired for empathy. And I can empathize with people, and to a certain degree, in certain circumstances, I can empathize with animals. And if I find myself empathizing with a machine, that is a very temporary situation and often very disconcerting. Like as soon as you cross that inorganic gap, that's when we start to get into the uncanny valley and the whatever. There's something deeply rooted in us from a biological imperative to say, oh, no, it's wrong to empathize with that. Like that empathy is supposed to be to protect life, to create community, to, foster understanding. But you empathizing with your car or, with a mechanical pencil, or a machine that plays a piano or something is a false, fleeting, and somewhat twisted thing. It doesn't serve
counterfeit.
You.
Yeah.
It is counterfeit. That's what I was looking for. It's counterfeit.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like you all remember from Psych 101, remember the photograph of, I think it was a monkey that was a baby monkey that was taken from its mother, and they built like a robot monkey covered in carpet with like weird big eyes. So that's basically, it's fooling us into thinking like, oh, that's nice.
And the fascinating thing about that is they starved those monkeys.
Yeah.
And they starved them of physical affection and food. And the interesting thing about it, because this is kind of kind of related to the topic is once they had been starved for I don't know what period of time, they were given food and this carpeted piece of wood that sort of looked like a monkey,
Right.
and they hugged the carpeted piece of wood and continued to starve from the food because even monkeys are deeply rooted in that need for connection. And I feel like I don't want to get too heated, but I've already called everybody a hack. So I feel like the danger, the danger and deep-seated evil that is in generative AI is in the falsity of that connection. It's the same reason that I find most social media to be deeply destructive to humanity is that it gives you the feeling of connectivity without the actual deep-seated results of connectivity. It gives you the idea that you are producing art without the results and transformative nature of actually producing art. It's basically meth. You're given a short-term feeling that is long-term destructive to you and to the community at large.
And also, I can't read enough to the music comparison's always so good because you know, a machine can play a guitar better than any human being, and they miss a note. They won't hit a dead fret.
Yep. Right.
Right. I could program a violin, and nowadays MIDI programs are pretty good. It could even sample a real violin, right? And there is something about flaw and the ticks of a real violinist, the most professional, the most profoundly gifted human, and those little flaws. And when those errors go away, I don't want to hear a perfect guitarist. I never want to hear a perfect guitarist because there is none. And it's boring.
I'm gonna,
does that make sense?
No, it does, and it made me think of I want to give my girlfriend a shout out. So Mary she's a classical musician. She plays the clarinet, and I had gone to the symphony before I knew her, but then we met, and I would be around for when she was practicing, and she would be practicing all the time, practicing, and in her little one-bedroom apartment, just like, I got to practice tonight, and just sitting there
running
and practicing
scales. Yeah.
And then for the first time, I remember the first time I went to go and when she was performing with the rest of the symphony. And it gave me a completely different level of appreciation for the whole experience. Because not only did I know her and the work that she had gone through to getting to that point, like all her life, since she was a little girl, basically, going to school and getting a master's and going and getting all these different jobs and practicing for this one, and now she's performing. So not only did I have the appreciation of that firsthand, but it was easier for me to then make that connection of everyone up there. They all have their own stories too. Like, they've all been doing the same thing independently, and now they're all coming to doing this thing. Again, I feel like this is what gets missed. Could you have a computer play, Beethoven perfectly? I'm sure it'd be very, very easy. Not a big deal. That's not the same. And it's not just about the piece of music. It's about what it takes to get there. It's not just about a comic. It's what it takes to get there. It's not just about whatever it is. And I think that's the whole point of this conversation. How do we start emphasizing? How do we start showing people what I got to see of someone practicing to play?
Yeah.
I love it. I think that's a good place to kind of wrap it. Actually, does anybody have anything they want to add before we kind of close out?
Prompt engineers are hacks. That's what I want to add.
I will say, I don't think you're gonna find. So, I will admit, we are a very biased group. I think here, I think any of us are highly supportive of the AI movement in art. So, speaking of, if you want to check out art that's not created by AI, you can check out my channel, you can, if you're subscribed to this one, you're watching it right now. You can hit the bell so you get notifications when you go live. And if you want to see art that's hand inked and hand lettered and hand on, and took years to make, you want to pick up some books and support art made by humans, buy Jacob's Apartment and Two Stories. Those are both indie comics, and they're probably buried in the algorithm by books that were made in a day, punched in on an algorithm or on an AI system. All right, so let's go to Corey. Corey, where can everybody find your stuff?
Yeah, you can go to my website. So it's just myname.com, so coreykerr.com, and go check it out. If you're interested in what I'm currently working on, you can go to coreykerr.com/email, and that'll take you to maybe one of the more performative things I've done, which is I am writing a book, unedited, unfiltered, and I'm releasing it chapter by chapter as I write it. So you can join me in that journey and see how the sausage is made, warts and all, as I kind of like figure this out. I think it's pretty good right now, but you also might be watching me completely crash and burn and waste a huge amount of time. Either way, it's going to be entertaining. So you can jump into that. That playlist is also on my YouTube channel under the podcast tab.
And it's good reading, and the beauty of it is it's also good reading if you're at work or like you're otherwise disposed, because you can put it on like an audiobook. So I love it. I'll watch it. I'll always catch up with Corey's stuff on my breaks at work, which is like great. So I recommend you guys do the same. It's great.
I will say the character in this current chapter originally was named Lou Jimhan, but then I called him an idiot too many times and I felt bad, so I changed it to Louis John, which is
I love Lou Jimhan as an alternate persona for Jim, though.
I think Lou Jimhan is going to show up somewhere, but not as a moron.
Maybe he could be a genius animator. So Gary, where can everybody check out your stuff and see your non-AI generated artwork?
That's right. The two best places to find me here on YouTube under my name, Gary Hodges, or on Instagram under the name of my comic, Dinosaurs vs. Marsbots, Dinosaurs vs. Marsbots. Those two places both have link trees too to get to all the other places in case you want to shop for books or find the Facebook page or whatever else.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thanks, Gary. Again, what a great discussion. And Scott, can everybody find your work? And then after you explain that, how do they keep track of this wild ride called the Artcasters?
Yeah, you can find my work at my website at circworks.com, where you will find, among other things, I'm making custom wax packs. Not custom, I mean, it's not like you can tell me what you want and I'll make it for you, but I'm making DIY wax packs, I'll say. Also, I've got digital products for making comics, and I've got my own comic, Young and the Dead. It's a kids versus zombie adventure story. It's like Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead. It takes place in the 80s if you're a fan of Goonies, Monster Squad, all those great 80s action movies with kids as the hero, but with zombies, then you'll probably dig it. I also have a YouTube channel where I'm bringing down and what I call reventifying old vintage stuff that you might order from the back of a comic book, adding a unique twist on it. And there's tons of videos up there, plus a backlog of old videos on making comics. You can check out on my YouTube channel at Circleworks Art Labs on YouTube. And this show, the Artcasters, we do the show pretty much every single week, but it rotates. It's not always just here on Josh's channel. It might also be on Corey's channel, or might be on my channel. And if you want to know, and there's an awesome book you should order from Christopher.
Oh, wait, yeah. let's show that real quick. You guys should order this.
Look at that.
Mine hasn't showed up yet, but I can't wait.
Hardcover, full color.
Whew.
Nice.
Whew. That's beautiful.
A fellow process wonk. Every day you can go and watch them. Sorry to interrupt.
You can go watch. I thought I should show it off. That's good, because that'll lead into the fact that Christopher Runsman was on the last episode which
Yes.
wasn't on Josh's channel, it was on my channel. And all that is to say that it kind of rotates around. It can get confusing, but if you don't want to be confused, just join the mailing list. There's a link in the description of the video. And what we'll do is we'll send out a newsletter, and it'll just notify you when we're going to be live, who the guest is, all that stuff. And we don't spam you or anything. That's all we ever do is like about 20 minutes or so before we go live, we'll send out a link to let you know where you can watch it and everything. So definitely check that out. Link in the description. And I want to thank everyone in the chat for showing up and keeping that conversation going.
Awesome. And I don't know if that's just me, but I think Scott went underwater towards the very, very last part of that sentence.
Very end. He did.
But
Right.
So we're gonna close out with our Luhan-esque animation. Here it is.
This one goes out to the Artcasters. Ooh, Artcasters! I say you're catching your spell, Artcasters. Catching your spell. Ooh, you're gonna cast that spell. Strike a hell. Whoa!